It's finally done, comrades. My very first custom controller is complete. Say hello to Nebula. Greetings, comrades. This is I'm Caleb, back with a new video regarding my very first custom controller, a DualSense no less. Also, don't mind the scar on my finger there. I was trying to change a part of my car and the pliers pinched my fingers, so yeah, that was fun. But anyway, behold, this is Nebula. This is my first ever custom controller, naturally, based on the DualSense. Now, funny story, if you hadn't watched my one of my Dwarf Fortress videos, I mentioned that my original Starlight Blue DualSense controller, my very first DualSense controller, I was doing a lot of troubleshooting, I was constantly taking apart the controller, make sure all the ribbons were set, and having to take a few parts out, putting a few parts back in to get some of the stuff to work. And I ended up, I'll show a picture here, two of the wires from the left, or in this case the right, haptic feedback motors disconnected. So that will require resoldering, which I do not have a soldering iron, nor do I have any soldering skills. So I just cut my losses and got rid of that controller, and instead I used the regular white DualSense controller that actually came with the PS5 Slim. I figured, you know, worthy sacrifice. And it was interesting, the Starlight Blue controller I had was a BDM-030, whereas the white DualSense that I used was a BDM-050, which the internals are slightly different. The covers for the adaptive trigger motors are different, and two of them had to be unscrewed in order to take apart the faceplate. And also the battery tray is slightly different, and the ribbon cables for the adaptive trigger are slightly different. But all these parts worked fine, because all these eXtremeRate parts that I got were compatible with the BDM-030, the 040, and this one here, the 050. So I was in good shape. And yeah, initially I did some initial troubleshooting with the original controller. I mentioned that when I press the triggers, both triggers are actuated at once. It turns out the ribbon cable for the back buttons, I put it in upside down, so I tried to fix that, but while doing so, those two cables from the feedback motors broke apart, and yeah, I decided to toss that. So yeah, my my Starlight Blue controller is unfortunately no more. I might get another one later down the road, just for, you know, for the sake of it, because it had sentimental value. It was my first DualSense controller. That being said, I decided to use the white DualSense controller as mentioned, which is a newer model, but that means that it's less prone to stick drift. And yeah, with all that said, this is the completed controller, Nebula. Naturally, I named it after the faceplate here. It doesn't look sweet, even though it's glossy, so it's prone to fingerprints and scratches, so yeah. But yeah, I've added quite a few things there, and obviously I added the new faceplate here. Pretty much the hardest part was the touchpad button. The whole touchpad PCB was a bitch and a half to get off. You had to get a heat gun or a hairdryer to heat it up a bit to loosen the adhesive. Then you had to pry that PCB out of the old touchpad and then put it into the new one. It's real pain, but I pulled it off. But yeah, we got the Nebula faceplate. We got blue face buttons and Show and Options buttons. And these aren't just any regular buttons. Here, listen to this. Yep, I added a clicky face button kit on here. It's a separate PCB that you put on top of the actual circuit board for the buttons. And at first I thought it would interfere with the ribbon cable for the back buttons, but it surprisingly does not. I tested on Gamepad Tester, works perfectly. So that's a win there. What's also a win, the new swappable thumbstick caps. Naturally went with blue. And yeah, you got the regular sort of concave ones. You also get two convex ones that are similar to the ones you get in the DualSense Edge, as well as one convex and one concave heightened thumbstick. They're a lot taller than the ones that come with the DualSense Edge, so that's a nice little win there. And yeah, works fine. You gotta make sure you press the actual caps in to the modules really good, otherwise they'll get stuck. So keep that in mind if you plan on installing these. And we got a different face button, since this is a custom shell. And yeah, we got the buttons up here. These are also blue, though for some reason the R1 thumbstick cap is stiff, whereas this one works fine. I don't know what the deal with that is. I checked both of them; they look the same, so I don't know what that's about. I tested on the original controller before it broke, and it was also stiff, so it might be just a problem with this little cap here. I mean, it responds, so yeah. So we got all these, but the biggest part of this, the biggest star of the show, the back button kit. This is the Ryzen 4 Plus Max from EXtremeRate. I said that all these parts are from EXtremeRate, but yeah, this is actually an improved version of the original Ryzen 4 kit. You have the 4 back buttons here. You get the 2 paddles here, as well as the 2 buttons here. And you also have this profile button, which you also use to program the buttons. And this stores up to 4 different profiles, so that's really nice. And probably the biggest thing, the reason I've got this, the trigger stops. They're full travel now, but as soon as you flip these, yep, micro switches, just like the Hex Gaming Phantom. So in a way, if you get the right parts, you can pretty much make your own Hex Gaming Phantom on a slightly cheaper budget. Granted, it's still going to be pricey. The DualSense controller is like $75. The Ryzen 4 Plus Max kit here is $48.99. And then you got the custom faceplate, the buttons, the adjustable height thumbsticks, as well as the clicky buttons, which the Hex Gaming Phantom actually did not have. So that's one thing this controller has, the Hex Gaming Phantom doesn't. And yeah, it's still cheaper than a Hex Gaming Phantom, but it's still not cheap. So, it's up to you whether or not you want to get a Hex Gaming Phantom, or maybe stick with first party and get a DualSense Edge, or just get your own custom parts and try to put it apart yourself. And yeah, just a few things to keep in mind. This setup here does not require any soldering, though the Ryzen 4 Plus Max kit comes with an extra ribbon cable that you have to solder onto certain contact points if you want to remap the L3 and R3 buttons, as well as the touchpad button, to the back buttons. I don't do that, so it's not necessary. In fact, EXtremeRate said themselves, soldering is optional. But if you want to remap the L3 and R3 buttons, as well as the touchpad button to the back buttons, you need to do a little soldering, which, yeah, you can if you want to, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. And EXtremeRate also has a tutorial video for installing all these parts, everything from replacing the faceplate to connecting the cables for the back buttons to swapping out the buttons for the trigger motors. This is a little different than the BDM-030, so, but it's somewhat simpler, oddly, so that's pretty cool. And not much else to say about that, though. One thing to keep in mind, pretty much the way I had this set up, there's unfortunately a little gap in the middle here, and I try my best to fix it, but no dice. A few like a slight gaps here, and I pressed it down as hard as I could, but it just would not stay put. So, something for something, I guess. But I plugged it in, everything works fine. The thumbsticks are good. All the buttons here are responsive, and surprisingly, they didn't interfere with the trigger stops and whatnot. So that's awesome. But yeah, as I mentioned, this does not require any soldering. Though if you're getting the back button mod here with the ribbon games, keep in mind, when I initially did my original controller, when I put in the ribbon cable, the metal conduits are facing up from the PCB, and when you press a trigger, both triggers were activated at once, and I had no idea what was going on until I figured out I put that cable upside down, so the metal conduits were facing down on the PCB. So yeah, it works now though, so that's awesome. But yeah, and the back buttons, I know these are somewhat polarizing because some people like them, some don't. You know, I rest my middle fingers here, and I'm able to press these pretty well, and I can quickly switch to these buttons right here. You know, some people prefer the buttons on the grips here, kind of like with the Phantom, and you know, some people kind of like here. Almost reminds me of the DualSense Edge in a way. So that's nice. But yeah, they're also micro switches, responsive, really good, and programming them. They actually have a tutorial for that as well to let you know how to program the buttons here. And you just press this twice and you'll switch to different profiles. It stores up to 4. So you can switch it for different games and whatnot. And again, you have even more flexibility if you solder the extra cable so you can remap the thumbstick buttons and the touchpad button. Which, again, I do not do that, but you can if you want to. I've already had the soldering kit and the skills. And yeah, that is Nebula, my very first ever custom controller. Maybe if I'm bored, I'll try to readjust this faceplate so there's not many gaps, but it powers on, it works, that's what matters. It's a shame I had to go through 2 different DualSense controllers in order to get this done. If I wasn't such an idiot with the first install with the Starlight Blue controller, I'd probably still have that, but like I said, I didn't expect it to be a smooth first go. Like I said, if you don't try, you don't learn. And this took a lot less time than the original controller because I figured out where stuff goes despite this being a newer model controller. Like I said, all these parts I have are compatible with the 030, 040, and 050. So despite that, it went through mostly without a hitch. I did have to go back a few times because the speaker fell out and had to put that back in. And my dumbass forgot to put the main ribbon cable between the contact to here. Which, again, it intersects with the clicky face button ribbon cable, but it doesn't interfere with it at all, so that's good. So yeah, that is my very first custom controller. Am I going to get another one in the future? Who knows? But anyway, this is I'm Gaming Caleb signing out. Y'all have a good day.